You know, that reminds me of the verses that say every knee shall bow and every tongue confess. Do you realize, and do you know, or remember, that you and I are part of a greater body of Christ, of believers who all around the world in different languages and cultures and customs, we all together stand as Jesus followers. And it's so amazing to remember that we are part of something so much bigger than just us. Pastor Adam is out of town. Last I saw, I think it was Paris. This is where he is, so he's way out of town. And he's going to be out of town for the next 2 Sundays, today and another Sunday. And so I'm going to share with you a little bit that came out of summer camp. I had the opportunity to speak at summer camp this year, the middle school summer camp. And let me just tell you something. The year before, I had said, I would never want to do that. And then I ended up doing it the next year. So don't ever say you don't want to do something, because it's going to happen. Right? And so this mini-series, if you will, this week and next, we're going to pause the 10 Commandments. And we're going to look at deserts, because that's what we discussed at summer camp. And I was concerned going into summer camp about talking about deserts to middle school students for an entire week. I wasn't really sure how much they would grasp. But what I found, and I've reflected on since then, is that this idea of deserts is so deep and so beautiful and has so much that we're going to try to cover it all in 2 weeks. No, not really. But we're going to try to at least look at pieces of it. And before I pray, there's one more thing I need to do for a few of our friends here. Congratulations to all our Chicago Cubs fans. It was a long time coming. So. All right. Will you pray with me, and then we'll actually get started. Gracious God, I just ask in the next few moments, Lord, that our hearts and minds would be open, God, and that you would speak to us, and we would be willing and ready to receive whatever it would be that you have to say to us this morning. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Okay, so I'm curious if you were to think for a moment, what would be your favorite beverage, your favorite drink? What would we see you walking around holding all the time? Is it soda, Coke, Pepsi? Is it water? Is it unsweetened tea, or better yet, sweetened tea? Is it coffee, Starbucks, anybody? Right? What is that drink that you would carry with you all the time? Or how about this? Have you ever experienced where you were invited to somebody's house, they were having a party, a bonfire, cookout, whatever, and you went to their house and they had a great spread of drinks, and everything was wonderful except they didn't have the one thing you wanted. You're like, oh, I know Coke. This is really a Pepsi family, right? And so you very politely take water and move on because you don't want to be rude. I have some more why questions here that I want to share with you that are just kind of interesting. Why does Dora the Explorer not use Google Maps? Or why are all the colors or flavors of Fruit Loops, why do they all taste the same? Why is it you put your 2 cents in, but it's only a penny for your thoughts? Where does that extra penny go? How about this one for all you grammar folks? Why is the word abbreviated so long? I don't understand that one. And the last cheesy one. Why is the alphabet song and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star the same tune? And then why did all of you just sing in your head to figure that out? Right? We all have these why questions. There's another time I ask why very often. On Wednesdays, because of our schedule, my wife and I usually eat dinner after the kids are in bed. And on my way home from here, I stop by Chipotle and take it home. And that's pretty much what we do every Wednesday. And so I go in there, and if you order Chipotle, you kind of design your own food. You go down the line, you make it look fantastic and great. It's everything you want. And then you get to the end, and you're like, I'll take a bag of chips, too. And they're like, we're out of chips, I'm sorry. And you're like, what? Like, just throw my food away now, right? The only reason to go to Chipotle is the chips. Why no chips? You're still open for another hour. Okay, maybe I've got an issue there. But You see where I'm going here? These are all surface level things, but when stuff doesn't go our way, or something becomes very challenging, or we're faced with a situation that we don't know how to deal with, the very first thing we usually do is why? Why is this happening? Why did this happen? Why are we facing this? Why me? Why not somebody else? Why did the Ohio State Buckeyes lose last night? I don't know, right? These are all very, very difficult questions, especially if you grew up in Ohio. But I think, though, if we ask the question why, maybe we are asking the wrong question. Like, I know that's our natural response is why, but I wonder if maybe we should change that just a little bit. If we make just a little change on the question we're asking, I think maybe we can understand situations a little better. Maybe we can survive difficult things a little better. If you haven't picked up on this, when I talk about desert, I mean those times in your life that are very, very, very challenging. Maybe you're fearful about the decisions your children are making. You're fearful about your own decisions. Whatever it might be, I don't know. But we all have these metaphorical deserts that we either have been through, we're going through, or someday we will likely go through again, maybe. And so we're going to look at a question that maybe we could ask during those times. But to do that, we need to look at Exodus chapter 16. This is the Israelite community after they are out of Egypt and they're now in the desert. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt. Did you catch that? Only 2 months after they came out of Egypt. Only 2 months after they had seen the water part and they walked through it, right? Not long at all. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death." Awful be you, Moses, right now. All right, chapter 17, verse 1 through 3 says this: "The whole Israelite community set out from the desert of Sin, traveling from place to place as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. So they quarreled with Moses and said, 'Give us water to drink.' Moses replied, 'Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test?' But the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses. They said, 'Why do you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst?'" This is the first recorded example of the grass is always greener on the other side. These people had just come out of Egypt. They had just seen all these miraculous things that I'm sure many of you learned in Sunday school only 2 months ago. And now they're like, why did we ever leave Egypt? We might have been in slavery, but at least we got to eat well. And now they're out here in the desert, and they're scared they're not going to eat, and they're not going to drink, and they're going to starve. Now, if I was to ask you for just a moment, when you picture a desert, picture that in your head, what is the first picture that comes to your mind? Think about that for just a moment. I believe that most people in the United States, maybe even the Western world, would think of sand, maybe some sand dunes, maybe some cactus, maybe some tumbleweeds, maybe a Western movie you've seen, I don't know. Right? We tend to think of deserts like that, and a lot of times they're generally more flat. There might be a few rocks here and there, but mostly flat. The desert that these people were in, though, looked something like this. This would have been more like the desert that they were in. And I want you to notice something. You can't really see that far, can you? Now, there are flat portions, but much of it would have been like this. And so for just a moment, just picture yourself sitting there on this narrow path in this valley, hungry and thirsty. And you're remembering that, yeah, you might have been in slavery, but you ate well just 2 months ago, 3 months ago. And so you look behind you on the path where you came from, and you can't see it anymore. And then you turn and you look at the path in front of you, and you can't see where you're going. I don't know about you, but this is a perfect image of the deserts I faced in my life. I can barely remember when things were a certain way, and I have no idea where I'm going. And this is what they faced. This is where they were. Loneliness and isolation, scare, fear, doubt, panic, any of those, all with them right there in that narrow canyon. Unsure about their future. You see, they went from Egypt to this. Not sure if they're going to eat. Not sure if they're going to drink. And just to give you an idea a little bit more about Egypt. Egypt, as you know, big power, right? And one of the reasons why they always had what they needed was this river called the Nile. And I think we have a picture here to show you. The river called the Nile. And just so you know, this Nile is somewhere around 4,258 miles long, which if you were to drive from here to the northern part of Michigan, that's about 1,300 to 1,400 miles. So just times that by 3, and that's about the length of the Nile. The Nile is massive, right? And they have this river that floods between August and September every year, and they have food because of that. And in fact, to the Egyptians, this river was the source of life. This is where life came from. We've got the Nile, we've got everything we need. What more do we need? We're set, we're good, we're fine. And the Israelite community came from that, where they had everything, to the narrow path, where suddenly they didn't even know if they were going to have what they needed the next day. You see, the Lord here, God, was moving this community of Israel from being self-reliant to being totally dependent upon God. From we have it all because of the Nile, to now we only have what we have if God provides it for us. Do you remember that God provided manna from heaven, food from heaven, and water from rocks? A lot different than the Nile, right? And I'd also say it might seem like a lot less than the Nile. There's this psalm that many of you are very, very familiar with. It's in Psalm 23. I'm only going to read a couple verses, and I'm sure some of you can quote this. Psalm 23, verse 1 says this: "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul." So for just a moment, just like we did with the desert, what's the first picture that you think of when you think of a green pasture? You know, growing up in the Midwest, it's probably a cow field or something like that. But the key image here that most of us think of is green. Right? This was prayed and written in a group of people who were desert people. Much of their history was in the desert. So for them, this was green pastures. That is vastly different than what we tend to think of in the West. That's not what we usually picture. Now maybe you do that in education, but your first thought generally goes to the color green. But if you notice, on those little trails, those little paths there, that's where shepherds take their sheep. And that's where they eat grass. And believe it or not, I have another picture here that shows you what they actually eat. You see the little pieces of grass coming up between the rocks? There's just enough moisture in the air for that to grow. And so when they walk along these paths, there's just enough. And this psalm here, if you think about this for just a moment, when anybody, when Israel is in the desert, whatever that desert is for you, God promises us that He will lead us along a path where there will be just enough. Not so much that you're self-reliant and you don't need God. That's not what God desires. God desires for us to trust Him, to lean on Him. There's just enough. So when we go back to our original question, and you think about your deserts, and we ask the question, why? Maybe our question shouldn't be why. Instead, maybe our question needs to be, what has God provided in this moment? Because in that question, and the answer is where you find the presence of God. When we first moved to Florida, we had been trying to sell our house for a long time before I had ever accepted a position in church in Florida. In fact, we had it on the market. We had 42 showings, I believe, and not a single offer. And so we took it off the market, and then I accepted a position in church in Florida. And so I had a pregnant wife and a house that we couldn't sell, and I was going to drive to Florida with no idea what we were going to do because we could not afford 2 houses even if we rented that one out. We could not do it. And so I left her. We put our house on the market. Actually, the day I started the drive, the house went on the market by ourselves, and we listed it on Craigslist. Yes, Craigslist. And on the second day of that drive, we sold our house. Just enough. It's hard to ask that question when you're going through a desert, right? That's a hard question. You can ask it, but to actually see it sometimes it's hard. And so if you're somebody who's going through a desert now and you don't know how to find the answer to that question, maybe do this. Think back on your past deserts, on the things that you've gone through before, and ask, what ways did God provide in those moments? Write them down. Because what happens is you'll see them, and you'll see a trend and a thread, and you'll see it working out. And then, when you're facing a new desert, you might not be able to answer where God was right now in that desert, but you can remember where God was before. And that might help you survive this desert just a little bit better. Just a little bit. You see, in the desert, whatever that is, we learn to lean upon God more than we did before. Our Niles, our finances, our jobs, our whatever, they won't sustain us through all of life's deserts. Only God, who provides just enough, will sustain us. Will you pray with me? Gracious God, I want to take a moment and lift up those in this room who are going through their own deserts right now, Lord. We lift them up to you and ask, God, that you would make obvious the ways that you are providing for them in these moments. God, for all of us here, may we sit down and take a moment and ask ourselves, what ways has God provided, Lord? And may you help us see those so we can remember those, so that we can grow in our trust of you, so that we can grow as people who walk more closely to you, leaning upon you every single day. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please stand as we finish up our service today.